Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Experts Podcast. Nick Hayes with you. Really looking forward to this one. It's a person I've known for a long time. In fact, he's been running around doing what he does and doing it at the best level, the highest. He's held in the highest regard by so many because he does do it so well. He's got lived experience. He's focused. And he is really causing and happening and making things happen in the world of mental health and well-being. His name is Graeme Cowan, and he joins me. Welcome, Graeme.
Lovely to join you, Nick.
Graeme, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been up and about. In fact, it's pretty much all of the 2000s that you've been doing this. Where did this start for you? Because I know when I talked about lived experience at the very beginning, you are lived experience helping people work through some of the things that has really been mental health has been at the top of the pops when it comes to as a priority for a lot of people today.
Way back in 2000, I was a vice president for Kearney, which is a global management consulting company, and I co-led the recruitment division, and it was going very well. It was, everything was booming back then, the new world of e-commerce. And then suddenly there was a tech crash, and we were doing a lot of work in that space. And suddenly the business burned up overnight. And in a very, very short period of time, I lost my job. My marriage broke down, and I was really, really in bad shape. I had to go and live with my parents, and I was actually out of work for 5 years, and I never felt that I could come back again. But it started by, exercising, reconnecting with family and friends, and then writing my first book, which is called Back from the Brink. And that's where I chronicle my story, but also about 12 others. And it was launched at the Black Dog Institute, and it became a bestseller. I sold 30,000 books, which is a big number in Australia. And then through that, I eventually met Gavin Larkin, the founder of Are You OK, in 2009, March 2009, and helped to launch that very first one, and was on the board for 13 years and stepped down about 3 years ago now.
Are You OK? It is a phenomenon. It's probably one of the leaders when it comes to putting a spotlight on mental health, on the well-being of people. And the Are You OK Day, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Graeme, is it's such an important day on the calendar, but it's not just the one day of the calendar, is it? It's got to be 365 days of that calendar.
100%. That's what I talk about. There'll always be a single day because that creates a sense of purpose,
sure,
and momentum and coverage. But it really has grown beyond that. And there's been specific industries that have adopted their own Are You OK? Like there's an Are You OK rail. It's where all the railways around Australia, government and private, have a whole week of it. There's Are You OK for lawyers, for also for hospitality, for car trade, and so it has really adapted. And of course, it was never meant for one day of the year, and but it's got fantastic and amazing recognition. But more importantly, we have actually found out that people are asking it more. And if they've heard the Are You OK message, they're much more likely to ask it. And it's got like something like 80% unprompted awareness. So it has been a huge success.
Yeah, look, it has. And I adore it partly because when I actually ask the question, and if you genuinely ask the question to someone, are you okay? And the response back is, I think, incredibly powerful because particularly in a world today where we seem to be, they say we're very connected. They say that we've never been more connected, but we have never been, in my opinion, more disconnected with all the things that are in front of us, all the interruptions, all of the things that distract us from the very things that it is to be human. And that question is so powerful. Are you okay? And then it probably just as important then, Graeme, would be the listening and the response back.
100%. And often, men in particular usually say, I'm fine. And then the follow-on question can be really helpful. You say, how are you really?
Yeah.
And often that can help cut through. But the most important thing is to listen with empathy and put yourselves in their shoes. Just ask open-ended questions, because the more the person feels understood, the greater the likelihood that we can encourage them to take action. Without to see a doctor or call a helpline or see a psychologist. So it's not just a question; it's helping to guide the people that need help to the appropriate individuals.
And Graham, just thinking back to that time when you were in your darkest hours, if you look back at those times now, how do you work with that and deal with that? Is that just a moment in time, or has it been the foundation of your work and what you're looking to do and move forward with?
It was, it was a long time. It was 5 years or so, and it does seem like a bit of a dream now, or a bad dream. But then I'm also like, I have a really good life now, and going through that episode really forced me to understand what's truly important to me. What are my values? What's my purpose? And I never thought I would ever say this, but I see the benefits now more than the setbacks of that period.
That's interesting, isn't it? The benefits as opposed to the setbacks, because I guess it is, again, going back, the foundation of the work today. I mean, we talk about a lot of experts, a lot of people that have done the theory and are probably more academic in that space. You're worked in the practical side. You've actually you've lived experience. You've been in there.
Yeah, and I think that really helps. When I present, people always comment on the story, that someone is willing to share their story. And what I've learned is that, if you share your story, people are more comfortable sharing their story.
Yes.
And everyone has a story, whether it's about them personally or someone close to them that has struggled and was battling but come back. But as you know, it's also really evolved for me as well. I've been presenting workshops to leaders for about the last 12 years about how to build, safer, more resilient and successful teams. And I really believe that work is such an important part of our well-being, and good workplaces are good for us. I don't like the term work-life balance, because it implies that life is good, work is bad.
Yeah.
But for many people, and I suspect you as well, Nick, work is an important part of our sense of contribution, our sense of connection with the outside world.
Oh, you're spot on, Graham. I love it. I totally with you on the work-life balance. Do not fight each other off. They're both great.
Yeah.
And when you can be in that kind of space, I think that you're in a lucky space. You're in a very good space to do that. Great way to head into the book that you have, Great Leaders Care, that you've only just launched. It's only gone out there in recent times. What was the driver behind it? And I've got a supplementary question to come with it, because I want to know which of the leaders really struck with you within the book.
Well, one of the things, I've always felt just intuitively that a mentally healthy workplace has got to be a better workplace, it's got to be a more productive workplace. And in recent years, there's been more and more evidence of that, people feel supported, they can be themselves, they can make suggestions, they can challenge ideas they don't agree with, to get better decisions, better teams, and better results. And so I felt that intuitively, but one of the ways I was going to prove it was to start the podcast, The Caring CEO. And I've now interviewed 90 CEOs that champion both a culture of care and a culture of high performance. And, it just, these people are living it. It's not theory. They're getting great results, but they're also really conscious about making terrific decisions.
Yeah, and 90 CEOs. That is a very good sample size of CEOs around the country, and probably of all different ilks. What seems to be the common trend then from CEOs when it comes to the health and well-being of their workers? What makes them care?
If there's one quality about them, and that's not quite answering a question, it's humility. They are a humble lot. Even if they're running an organisation of 55,000 people, like Mike Schneider from Bunnings.
Sure.
But I think they just get it. And I talk about a three-part Great Leaders Care mindset, which is about championing self-care. And, that's the foundation of everything. If we can't take care of other people if we can't even take care of ourselves. And then there's crew care, which is about building psychologically safe and resilient teams.
Yep.
And that psychological safety is the number one predictor of best teams. And then the third element is red zone care. And this is really like the Are You OK 365? How do we identify and support someone who's struggling?
Yeah. Okay. And that humility that you're talking about, and that humble from leaders that are, I suppose they're not there because not just on their own. They're there because they've been able to traverse, and it's a journey that they've relied on others as well. And I think that humility or that humbleness then, is it returned back, or is it just this kind of feel and sense that to be a better business, we've got to look after the number one asset, that is our people.
Yeah. And there's lots of strains and stresses in the workplace, as you'd be aware of, Nick. There's the AI disruption, which is affecting every single workplace. There's, the chaos in the Middle East, which will continue for some time.
Sure.
And there's also the cost of living crisis. Many people are really hurting with that. And, going back to what you said before about, we're technically more connected than ever, but there's never been more loneliness. And that's probably what you say when you mean by disconnected. People don't feel, in fact, men aren't good at this at all. 25% of men don't have anyone outside their direct family they can confide in or be vulnerable for. So, we really need this sort of this caring environment. And as I said, it's not just theory. Gallup organisation has been measuring discretionary effort and engagement for over 40 years. They've now got it down to just 12 questions or 12 statements. And one of those statements is, my supervisor and someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Now, this has been asked over 1 million times in 100 countries. And the more people that strongly agree with that statement, the higher the productivity, the profit, customer service levels, and the longer people stay with the organisation. So, I talk of care as being a strong skill, because ultimately this will make the difference between a great team and an average team.
Yes. And that's what, I guess, when it all comes down to it, that's all we're looking for as business owners and leaders is to retain good staff, make sure that their needs are looked after. You better the staff member, the better that they feel and they're going about their life, the better work, the output will be better. It's a real challenge because there's a lot of toxic workplaces out there. Culturally, don't fit. They're just ugly places to work, and then for the people become that as well, and the output becomes that. It starts at the top.
It really does. That they had the biggest impact by far. And just one example. Mike Schneider from Bunnings. He leads his life by the 4 H's. His life and his work, and so the 4 H's are honest, humble, helpful, and happy. And I don't think it's any surprise that Bunnings are the most trusted corporate brand, and they have been for the last 2 years. When you've got a leader that thinks that way, it just it flows down to his executive team and then to the middle management and on the store level. But they really also just, strive to build a sense of connection and belonging in a team. They, really encourage open discussion and really try to champion psychological safety, where people feel safe making suggestions or challenging ideas they don't believe in. And they really also encourage intelligent risk-taking, growing together. And, that's what individuals want, is a workplace where they feel they belong,
Mm.
But they also feel that, that they're contributing to the direction of the team and the organization. And I think the final element is, we're most engaged when we use our top 5 strengths. The Gallup Strengths Finder tells us that. And if we know and develop those, it makes for a rewarding career.
It does, and it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt that Bunnings also has that sausage sizzle out the front, because I tell you what, if there's nothing more uplifting, both as a patron of Bunnings quite regularly, at least once or twice a week, just to get into that sausage on the weekend. It's if Mike ever goes down the pathway of getting rid of the sausage, I think Australia would collapse.
He rides in the streets.
I love that though. You mentioned psychology safety, the psycho-safety aspect, and that psychosocial is becoming incredibly big as a challenge there for workplaces at the moment, because it's even coming into law. It is in law now, and it's a responsibility there for businesses and brands to look after their staff and make it a safe place to work. Do business leaders actually understand this, Graeme? And you've interviewed many. Do they understand the fundamentals of this?
There's 2 elements to it. There's the psychosocial risk process and the leadership side of things. And you need both, to do it well. The first thing is to demystify it. And psychosocial risk is harmful work stress.
Yep.
And groups like WorkSafe have identified 14 contributors to poor mental health in the workplace. And they can be things like too much work, not having control over your work, unclear role clarity, and they can all make a difference. I think that overall, there's still very, very poor awareness about what it is, but more importantly, what to do about it and what to make a difference and how to improve it. But what I was saying is that, there's 2 parts. There's the leadership and the process, and leadership hugely trumps the process, because you can have the best ideas, the best insights, but if you're not equipped to be able to implement it or inspire change in your team, it's just not going to happen. And I think there's a bit of it's falling a bit in the middle. The organizational development, HR talk about leadership, the work health safety talk about the risk, and we've got to be bilingual. We've got to be able to talk the language of business and the language of harmful work stress.
Yeah, I like that. I like it how you sort of described that the leadership is more important than the process. And that, I think, might take a little bit for people to actually understand, because everything is so process driven. From everything from getting up in the morning right through your day to the end of the day, there's processes in place in just about everything that we do. Yeah. But if we don't have leadership, if we don't have strong leadership, or at least understanding leadership, or leadership that's working together with that process, we've got probably chaos. We probably don't have what we're intending to go out and achieve.
Yeah. Well, one of the real workplace icons in terms of leadership was Peter Drucker, and his famous saying was, "Culture eats strategy for lunch."
Yes.
And it's the same parallel. It's the people interaction, the support we feel there will always outweigh. If you've got a perfect strategy and poor leadership, it counts for nothing.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you've got a really stressful workplace and you know the root causes, but you've got poor leadership, it won't happen. So we really need to use both.
We do, and it's and we need to do it well. So talk to me about the book, The Great Leaders Care. Of all the CEOs that you interviewed, was there anything outstanding? Was there anything that really shone or took you by surprise when interviewing for the book?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about Bob Chapman. Now, he was the CEO of an American company called Barry Waymiller. And it was like a humble manufacturing equipment and services company. But he grew it from $20 million to $3.6 billion.
Wow.
And the reason I just, really want to talk about him is that sadly he passed away about 2 months ago. But he had some unbelievable insights, and he was in that role for I think 40 years or something. But along the way, he learnt that you show you care by listening with empathy.
Yeah.
He thought that you had to do stuff to show you cared or talk to people to show you cared, but it was the listening with empathy. And he wrote a book called Everybody Matters, and he's got a TED talk on that matter. He was a mentor to Simon Sinek, because he was an organisation that was actually doing, what Sinek talks about a lot.
Yep.
And just to see the sadness in this organisation, which is 12,000 people, when he passed away, but also just remembering what he contributed. And they had over 100 acquisitions, but he used to call them adoptions. And so basically what they did when they took over a company and said, look, we're not going to do anything for 6 months. What have you been wanting to do for a long time, but people have stopped you?
Yeah.
Over. So it was really embracing and people feeling that they weren't just going to be ruled over, and they were really going to be listened to and help them to put into practice things that they thought would help make them successful. And, it's just, he was in 2025, he was named in Fast Companies. I think he was number 7 in top global leader influencers sort of thing. So, a wonderful person.
It's amazing just the power of language, and just changing that word acquisition to adoption. The genuine care is far more. And I love what you said, that he would ask, what haven't you been able to do in the last 6 months? What would you like to do?
Exactly.
Because then that is that genuine question and asking. And probably the most powerful thing as I'm getting from this podcast is the power of listening, is to hear what the real issues are or what you can do. I think if we can all listen a little better, we would probably be in a much better place.
I agree.
Yeah, I find that incredible. So that is, again, probably the other element of a caring leader, and the one that you're talking about here is that it's not necessarily what they say or do. It's how they listen and take in from others. That's is that in your interpretation of a great leader?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I think the very good leaders always talk last, or ask questions last. They look at what plays out, they read the room, they look at how people are, and then come in at the end and it could be guided by a question or a statement or whatever, but it comes from a place that he or she has sought to understand before issuing an edict or asking a question. At the end of the day, people love to hear their own name, and if it comes on the end of a question, it's even stronger. So I think that's something we can all take away, Nick, is strive to be better listeners.
That is, it's now going to be a mandate of mine, just to sit back and listen. And I know a lot of my staff listen to this podcast, and they will be holding me to account on that, no doubt, for sure. The book it's been out there. How's it going? And what has been the feedback from those that are consuming it? What are they telling you, Graeme?
Well, I think it has been very well received. I was looking at the sales figures for the last month, and it was the second highest business selling book in that previous week, sort of thing. So it has been well received. It's had a very good presence at airport bookshops. And when I first started writing this book, that's where I pictured it. I thought, business people traveling, etc., etc. The things that they like is that it's practical.
Yes.
And it's so, I basically tried to structure each chapter around like a hook, a what, why, and how, and then a success story. And so that has resonated well with people, saying that It's doable, it's practical, it's research-based, because there's all the things I advocate, where there's stories to support it, there's often, credible evidence to support it as well. So I think my goal really was for people to finish the book, and particularly leaders, strive to create what I call a green zone crew. And so that's part of a moodometer, red, amber, green zone.
Gotcha.
When we're in the green zone, we're more optimistic, more energetic, more resourceful, more grateful. But we're also, and this is studies by Sean Aker, we're 31% more productive, we sell 37% more, and we're 200% more creative. So building teams that embrace that as individuals, but also as team members, has to deliver a better result.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's fairly simple when you say it like that. It's better. People that are in a better place are going to get better results, and I think that's the aspiration for every brand and business that's out there. Although we do know, Graeme, that there are a lot of businesses that don't care for this. They don't get themselves even close to it. It's a little too woo-woo for them, if you like. Well, what do you say to businesses that have that kind of mindset?
Well, I say it's a strong skill, and I can give, I gave you the Gallup evidence before. There's, culture, the word culture comes from cultus, which is Latin for care.
Yes.
So this isn't some new discovery. This has been known for a long, long time. And what I often do, in my presentations, and ask people to reflect on a great team they've been part of. I talk about the start of Are You OK? And, really hard to get going, not many resources, not much money, no employees, and we gradually get going. But then I ask them to reflect on a great crew they've been part of. And, just think of one where it may not have been easy, but, you pull together and got great things done. And then I ask people to vote anonymously using Menti. And, there's about 10 different options, and ask people to nominate the top 3 elements of their great crew. And in literally 90% of the cases, so there's ones like compelling strategy and complementary strengths and employee engagement. But in 95% of the cases, the top 3 are: we cared about each other, we had each other's back, and we encouraged each other. And that's the human stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we are people, and we do need it in the workplace. No matter how much AI is there, we still need people interaction and support around us.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast around AI and the disruption, and the fact that this technology now is probably the biggest shift in the way that we work, probably since the Industrial Revolution. Now, I think it's getting to that level of what we can expect and what we're going to see. How much of that AI, because everything that we've been talking about up to right now has been that empathy, that care, that human element that is there. What is the threat of AI today to businesses and to leadership?
Well, it's a threat and it's an opportunity. It really is. And I really think 3 out of 10 employees are fearful they'll lose their job.
Sure.
So there's this underlying fear about it. But there was a report done by Deloitte that they actually called it AI brain fry. And it was basically acknowledging that it was very difficult for people, because they're trying to use AI, then they've got to check it and double check it. And that's the most boring sort of work you could ever do, to try and sort it out. But what they said was really, really helpful was if employees and managers were giving guidance about how to use it. And what they really concluded was that, it's about a manager talking to an employee and say, okay, with all the job you do here, what's your favorite part? What don't you like? And usually they don't like stuff is, admin or repetitive stuff. And so the best people say, well, let's try AI on that bit. Let's just try and see if we can automate that, take that away from you so you can free up more time to do things that you like. And so it's not just about saving time, it's also thinking about what you could do with the extra time that's available. I'm a big fan of AI. When I was preparing the book sort of thing, as I said, I got 90 interviews and thought of going through all those transcripts and getting feeds and that sort of stuff
Sure.
was just a nightmare thought. And you'd relate to that, I'm sure. But honestly, I end up finding out that for the written word, I found Claude to be the best. And, I ended up having a series of prompts that just really summarize each transcript really, really well and also helped identify themes. It would have taken me probably a year of solid work trying to do that if I did it manually. So,
Sure.
there's tremendous advantages, but there is fear, and I think that leaders just need to be able to provide guidance to their team about how to make the most of it, not to be threatened by it.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. I like that. And we've been talking a lot about AI at the moment, particularly in the media and the being found space, because now AI, whatever the platforms that you're on, the days of SEO are starting to disappear, where geo is now coming into play. And it's this kind of content. It's this content that we are sharing, putting out there, that is being looked at, as opposed to what's being paid for at this point. And it is changing and flipping everything at the moment. There's a statement that runs around, though, Graeme, that it does concern me, because this is where I think where leaders, it is a challenge for them. AI is making smart people dumber and dumb people smarter. It's a sort of an even or upper, I suppose, of where you can enter it into and get something regurgitated to come back at you. But when you referred and mentioned that sort of going, that assessment of the AI and the work that you have to do to go back over and over again, because whatever comes out doesn't come out the way you potentially want it to or that you need it to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more involvement with machine-driven content, as opposed to that human connection that we're all looking for. And I think that I suppose I'm posing the question there to you from a leadership perspective side of it. How much do they need, or should they be using it? Because does it take away the uniqueness, that empathy fact that they need to be delivering to their staff, to their stakeholders, to the people that they want to connect with?
Yeah. I've heard, I can't remember who said it, but talk about being people first, AI, and people last. And I really like that because, it's over the years and experience, leaders have picked up lots of skills, lots of knowledge, and that sort of stuff. So I think it's really important that they think about how they set up a plan or research to turn into action. And then to be able to pass it away to AI is also really, really helpful. And then what comes out, and AI will provide the recommendations, but just to think about, how does this make sense? Does this make sense? What's been proposed? Based on my experience, is there anything left out? Is there anything that I would challenge? And it's very, very important that element. And so people are very much part of that. Then you hear examples, like Facebook sacking 5,000 people, and they've got to stay on for 6 months so AI can learn what they're doing to replace them. Now that's a pretty not a very healthy example of the way to do it. But there'll be plenty of organisations that will be thinking that way as well. But
there will be, and I think many are, and particularly when the margins can come down, and the fact that some of the work, as you've even described, the work that is probably a little mundane or a little bit repetitive, how do we adjust for that, and how many dollars can we save? It will be there, and I think that's the challenge. But that Facebook example, that's probably the most least humane way of going about it. I mean, honestly, teach the machine so that they can take over from you one day. That's wonderful. Graeme, you've got the podcast, The Caring CEO. You are, you're an amazing speaker. So I first met you as a speaker and on this topic of mental health and well-being, etc. And the podcasting, what do you like about it? Has it opened doors for you? Is it something? Obviously, it's a driver of the book and further content.
Well, it was, a driver of the book in terms of the themes that came through, the examples, the case studies, all that sort of thing. And, one of my top, in my top 5 strengths from the Gallup perspective is learning and developer. So learning is obvious. Developer is looking at ways you can encourage people to progress and improve themselves and that sort of thing. And, when I do that, I feel good about myself and about life. And it's something that I think is helpful for everyone to understand their strengths. And because, Gallup show that if you use your top 5 strengths every day, you're 300% more likely to be engaged in your work and 600% more likely to report high life satisfaction. So there's some, great messages in there about, when we're best at work. And I really believe it comes down to 3 things: having a purpose and being able to articulate what your purpose is, using your strengths as the tools, and then having a sense of gratitude, which is the energy to sort of keep you going.
I like that a lot. Of all the people that you have interviewed, which one has sort of surprised or knocked your socks off a little? Which one of your many guests that you've had on have you gone, well, I didn't expect that, or it's we opened up a box there that's I'm just very pleased we opened?
Well, actually, probably it's the one that's being published this week, and it was with a leader, Gary Ridge. So he was the CEO of WD-40. The
love WD-40. There's nothing that product can't do.
Well, it's interesting. He talked about, getting his job, and his father was a fitter and turner. And so he said, I've been approached by WD-40. Dad, what do you think? Oh, you can't go wrong with that, son. That's great. It was actually developed by NASA, believe it or not. And,
unbelievable.
But anyway, he's a very, very knockabout guy.
Yep.
But unbelievably successful as well. During the time he was with WD-40 as CEO, they 10x the valuation of the company. But he's got a book which is called "Any Dumbass Can Do This," and and he does clarify that ass was not, your bottom; it was a donkey.
Yes.
And basically he talked about the qualities of a donkey that made it really, really valuable. But yeah, very much a knockabout sort of bloke. But no one can argue with the results. And he's had people like Amy Edmondson and Simon Sinek and Bob Chapman, all just endorsed. So he's a lovely surprise, and so it's coming out this week.
I'm looking forward to it. And just on WD-40, I was only using it on the weekend to clean my lights on the car. There's videos on this on YouTube on all the things that you can do with WD-40. It's, I reckon, one of the greatest products running around. It's like Windex. It can do just about anything. Graeme, we're getting a little close to the end. I just want to get a sense and feel from you as probably one of Australia's most caring leaders out there. What does the future hold? What does a future leader look like? And what can they do to be the best that they can possibly be?
Well, it is, I think embracing these strong skills like empathy, like listening, like care, like coach, like encourage and acknowledge. All those things make people feel good. when that happens in their team. And it's not rocket science, but it can get forgotten with the busyness of work and activity. And, it is always really worth considering, am I working on high impact work or I'm just busy? And that will be, I think, another really key component of successful leaders is making sure they make time for, as Stephen Covey used to say, the important but not urgent, because that's where the biggest gains are in doing longer term work, looking at longer term plans and solutions and better solutions than just trying to churn through a to-do list.
Yeah.
And it's always a hard balance because we have people calling out to us, but just carving aside time where you can really focus on the high impact stuff will be really important for leaders, and also to give them perspective about AI and what's happening with it and what are the good parts, what are the parts we've got to be concerned about.
Yeah. No, I like that. I really do. I think, and can I just add something too? Because there was something that when I was going through early years of the workforce, and there was working in the media industry. It's fairly cutthroat and very competitive. But one of the things that was always said to me: if you don't hear from the boss all day, you've done a great job, right? And I there was a lot of days I didn't hear from the boss, so I'm giving myself pats on the back. But you know what, Graeme? I think sometimes you just need a pat on the back or how you going? What's going on? You're doing all right? And I've sometimes used that in my own work life career, and I look back on it now, going, well, that was a little bit mean. I didn't like it, so why the hell was I doing it to others? And I think that empathy needs to kick in and kick in harder for a lot more people. Graeme, I have loved this chat. I've loved this on so many levels. Read the book, ladies and gentlemen, Great Leaders Care. It's out at all good bookstores. If you're flying by, if you're in the airports, it's never too far away from there. And it's a great read on the plane. And by the way, tell you what, reading the book only demonstrates how much you care to others. It's a great title. It's one of the great titles. Thank you, Graeme. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
LinkedIn's probably a great way to do that. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so just reach out. And secondly, via the website has information about my presentations, workshops, and that sort of thing. And I also co-founded a business called We Care 365, and so it's scalable training to help managers have better burnout prevention conversations.
It's important too. The burnout is real. It is going on, and we need to do that better. So touch base with Graeme if that does fit with what you're up to or what you're doing, and just get the book, get in there and understand how to do it better. It's a great read. All right. Well, thank you, Graeme, for joining us. And thank you to the listeners and the viewers these days. We are on YouTube. It's been a great chat around the empathy and the real care that you do need to put in, both as leaders, but also to pass it back as well. It doesn't matter which level of management that you're in. It's so important that you hand it back down and occasionally push it back up. Such an important discussion. Graeme, thanks for joining us on the Experts Podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity, Nick. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Fantastic. That's Graeme Cowan. He is a resilience leadership expert, mental health, everything along those lines. And never has the conversation been more important today than it ever has been. It is one that we must continue. I look forward to having your company when we talk to another expert and another media next week. We'll see you then.